Welcome to From Manuscript to Ministry, created and produced by Elder William Moore, the podcast where faith meets the written word. Each week, your hosts David and Martha dive into powerful, self-published books by Christian authors who are boldly using their God-given voices to impact the kingdom. Whether you're an aspiring writer, a reader seeking spiritual growth, or a ministry leader in search of authentic resources, this is your space to be inspired, encouraged, and equipped. Let's explore today's featured book and uncover the life-changing message behind the manuscript.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the source material you're interested in, and we really, dive deep. We pull out the core ideas, the insights you can actually use. Basically, we want to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed.
And today we're looking at some really powerful stuff. We've got excerpts focusing on inner strength, on character, really about living with intention, with presence.
Yeah, the material is drawn from commentary on ancient wisdom, specifically Proverbs 31, chapter 16. And the sources have given it this fantastic title, Gracefully Fearless, Dignity and Dependability.
And look, while the original text has a spiritual context, our goal here today, our mission, is to pull out the principles that apply universally. Think leadership, resilience, even just personal psychology in today's world.
Right, because these aren't just old sayings. The sources treat them almost like a behavioral blueprint, how to navigate, everything with the kind of quiet power.
Exactly. It's practical wisdom.
Okay, but that core idea, gracefully fearless, it sounds tricky. Almost like a contradiction, doesn't it? How can you be moving in peace and taking bold action at the same time? Aren't those opposites?
That's the really interesting part, isn't it? And the source material tackles that directly.
Yeah.
It suggests this fearlessness isn't about ignoring danger or just, not caring.
Okay.
Instead, the central idea, the hook, is that fear doesn't get to dictate your future. And why doesn't it? Because grace, or maybe think of it as a deep, settled understanding of who you are and what you've already overcome that's already shaped your past.
Ah, okay. So the past shapes the present approach. Let's dig into this for a second, because that sounds crucial.
Yeah.
If you've got that internal foundation, knowing who you are, maybe knowing you've gotten through tough stuff before.
Then you approach the next challenge differently.
Absolutely. Think about it from just a basic psychological angle. If your internal narrative is full of past failures or shame, then fear feels like the natural response when something new comes up. It can be paralyzing.
But if your narrative includes resilience, maybe forgiveness, maybe just competence, you've built this personal grace we're talking about, then you face the new thing from a place of security, not defensiveness.
So you're free to act boldly because the outcome, it doesn't threaten your fundamental self-worth.
Precisely. Your core is secure. That's the mechanism. Fear doesn't get the driver's seat for the future because your internal alignment, your grace, has already solidified your past.
I like that frame. Fear doesn't shape the future because grace shaped the past. Okay, so that's what we're exploring today. We're focusing on three main traits from this commentary. First, dignity, then dependability, and finally, something the source calls radical trust, which seems to be the engine behind this whole gracefully fearless idea.
Yeah, and they really work together. They're synergistic. Each one builds on the others, creating this profile of a person who earns respect naturally through substance without ever needing to shout for attention.
Okay, let's dive into that first one then. Section 1, the strength of dignity, or as the source puts it, quiet confidence. And we have to start with this quote because it just flips things on their head. Her dignity isn't loud, but it commands attention.
It's fascinating right away, isn't it, that paradox? Because today, so often, you have to be visible to be validated. The assumption is if something's powerful, if it's commanding attention, it must be loud, amplified, performed.
Yeah, you got to have the platform, the followers.
Right. But this person's authority, according to the source, is fundamentally quiet.
So it's about the genuineness of that authority then. It's not something achieved by constantly chasing likes or approval.
Exactly. The commentary explores that. It's not about begging to be seen, constantly posting updates or doing mental backflips to justify every little thing. It's just about being a kind of settled, quiet confidence that gives you this really solid grounding.
Okay, so how does the source define that dignity then? What is it?
It uses this very specific, quite beautiful pairing. Dignity is honor coupled with humility. That's the core concept here.
Honor and humility.
Yes. Honor gives her that inherent self-regard. She knows her worth, fundamentally. But the humility part is key. It means she doesn't weaponize that worth. She doesn't boast about it or use it to demand special treatment.
Because she's already sure of it.
Exactly. Because she's so certain deep down of who she is, she doesn't need to explain it or defend it. Her value isn't up for negotiation based on what other people think. It's fixed.
Okay, but hang on. I have to push back a little here. In the real world, in business, maybe politics, even just social settings, if you're too quiet, don't you just get steamrolled? Don't you risk becoming invisible? How is this quiet confidence different from just being passive?
That's a really important distinction to make, and the source implies the difference lies in the source of the quietness. A passive or unassertive person might be quiet because they fear conflict or they fear rejection, but the dignified person described here is quiet because of internal certainty. She speaks when it's necessary, when substance is needed, and when she does speak, people listen because her words aren't filled with insecurity or a need for applause.
Ah, I see. It's a different quality of silence and a different quality of speech when it happens.
Precisely. And the source directly contrasts this with the modern world's obsession, and it uses that word obsession with platform building and self-promotion.
So where the world demands a performance.
This commentary insists on substance. Yes, the contrast is stark. The source notes that this gracefully fearless woman, she builds a life worth watching, not just a performance for the crowd.
A life worth watching. What does that mean in practice?
It means her focus is on long-term investments. Her character, her decisions, her work, they stand on their own. She's building the actual foundation, the substance of the building, not just worrying about how shiny the facade looks. She doesn't need the external amplification because the internal structure is sound.
Okay, I think we need to pause on that because how she handles pressure seems really key to understanding this quiet grounding. The source says she doesn't react, she responds, she doesn't flex, she flows. That sounds like a masterclass in emotional regulation.
It really is. This might be the highest expression of that inner grounding, and it ties directly into emotional intelligence, a reaction that's often automatic, right? Primal. Your amygdala fires off, someone pushes your button, you snap back instantly.
We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. But a response that shows engagement from the higher brain functions, the prefrontal cortex, it implies a pause, even a micropause, for processing. It's a deliberate choice of action that aligns with her values, not just her immediate frustration or feeling threatened.
That pause is where the dignity lives.
Yes, and then the flex versus flow idea.
Right, what about that? Flexing sounds like trying too hard, maybe.
Exactly. It implies striving to appear strong, maybe compensating for some underlying insecurity. It's performative, a muscular, temporary display to impress or intimidate. It's quite rigid, actually.
Whereas flowing
Suggests adaptability, moving gracefully and effectively through circumstances, not fighting against them rigidly. She adapts to the currents like water around a rock without being fundamentally shifted from her core identity. She doesn't need to show strength. Her strength is just inherent in how she moves.
It sounds much more sustainable under pressure.
Definitely. It's resilience in motion.
So, wrapping up this section on dignity, what's the big takeaway for someone listening who wants to cultivate this? The source says this dignity is inherently attractive. It doesn't need defending. It's just felt. You feel that presence.
It creates this kind of magnetic pull based on authenticity. When you're genuinely grounded in that honor and humility, you naturally become a calm center, especially when things get chaotic around you. That's a powerful leadership quality that doesn't need volume control.
It's the difference between having to argue that you're in charge versus people just recognizing it because your demeanor speaks volumes.
Exactly. Your presence precedes you.
Okay, so that groundedness, that quiet dignity, it naturally leads into reliability, doesn't it? If you're secure, you're less likely to be flaky or driven by panic. Which brings us neatly to section 2. Dependable in every season. The source even calls this a spiritual requirement of consistency.
Yes, it's the bridge from internal state to external action, from dignity to dependability.
Let's start with a core quote here. People know they can count on her, not just when it's easy, but when it matters.
And framing it as a spiritual question, as the source does, really elevates it beyond just, being reliable. It becomes about character, about self-governance under pressure. Does your inner conviction actually translate into reliable action when things get tough?
That's the real test, isn't it? It's easy to be consistent when everything's going great, when you feel motivated, when people are patting you on the back.
Right. Sunshine consistency.
But the real measure is when the pressure's on, maybe things look bleak, maybe you're just tired. That's when dependability really shows itself.
Absolutely. And the notes we have really stress this. It's not just about the big, flashy result, that one huge success. It's about sustainable consistency. That's the key. The source clarifies its consistency, not perfection or polish.
Okay, that's important. So she doesn't have to be perfect. No flawless presentation, no 100% scores all the time.
Not necessarily. The emphasis is on being consistently present, being faithful to commitments, being reliably predictable. And predictability, in this sense, isn't boring. It's the absolute bedrock of trust, whether it's in a team, a family, or any relationship.
That makes sense. In organizational psychology, we talk about psychological safety. Knowing your leader or your colleague is dependable, that will show up. That makes you feel safe to take risks, to be vulnerable.
Exactly. If someone is erratic, even if they have moments of brilliance, it's emotionally taxing for everyone around them. You're always wondering which version you'll get today.
Yeah, it creates anxiety.
It does. So the source is arguing for the long game, the compounding interest of just being steady. A dependable person actually conserves the emotional energy of the people they interact with.
And the source is clear. This isn't just about work, right? This dependability needs to show up everywhere.
Yes, it emphasizes consistency across multiple spheres, translating ancient roles into modern life. Ministry, marriage, motherhood, entrepreneurship, these are all areas where character is tested over the long haul, often in unglamorous ways.
And the implication is, if you're truly dependable, it shows up across the board. Because the underlying character is integrated.
That seems to be the idea. If she's reliable in one area, she tends to be reliable in all, because the foundation, that dignity, that source of strength we talked about, is consistent. It's whole.
Which really speaks against that compartmentalization we sometimes see, doesn't it? You know, the person who's a superstar at work but maybe lets down their family, or vice versa. This is about a singular, integrated character.
And it shows up especially in the tough times, the messy times, the times when maybe nobody's even watching.
The source uses some vivid metaphors for those testing conditions, right?
It does. It talks about her being reliable in the rain, in the fire, in the dry seasons. Rain could be sadness or setbacks. Fire is obviously crisis, intense pressure. And dry seasons, those long periods of waiting, maybe professional stagnation, when nothing seems to be happening.
So can you be counted on when circumstances are actively difficult, when there's no immediate reward or payoff? That's the mark of true dependability.
It's the difference between a fair-weather friend and a real ally, isn't it?
Absolutely. But let's get practical. What does dependability look like in action? Because the source clarifies, it's not about being some kind of superhero who always has the perfect answer.
Right. It boils down to two key actions, according to the commentary. First, showing up when it's inconvenient.
Oof. That hits home in our convenience-obsessed culture.
Doesn't it? We're wired to engage when it's easy, when the timing's perfect, when it doesn't cost us much. But true dependability, the source says, often requires sacrificing comfort or time or ease. You show up because you made a commitment, not because it feels good or the path is clear.
That's how deep trust is built, showing up when it's hard.
Exactly. And the second action is doing what's right when no one's clapping.
Ah, integrity when unseen.
Precisely. Acting ethically, responsibly, keeping your word, even when there's zero external validation. Maybe even when doing the wrong thing would be easier or offer a shortcut. That's where character is truly forged, in those unobserved moments.
Can you give an example? Maybe professionally.
Sure. It could be something like catching an error in an expense report that favors you and correcting it even though no one would likely notice. Or refusing to cut corners on a project deliverable even when you're under pressure, and technically could get away with it.
Small things, maybe, but they build that internal foundation.
They build the moral fiber. The commentary suggests these unseen choices are what build a legacy, because integrity becomes your default setting.
Okay, so this deep well of consistency, of integrity,
Yeah.
where does it come from? Because honestly, trying to maintain that purely through willpower sounds exhausting.
It would be exhausting. And the source material points directly to this. This dependability isn't just self-generated grit. It's rooted in knowing where her strength comes from. Meaning it's anchored externally in something reliable and constant. The text refers to God, but for wider application, we could think of it as a core governing principle, something bigger than oneself.
So if your source of strength is internal and maybe fluctuates like motivation or how well you performed yesterday, your consistency will eventually wobble too.
That's the implication. Your character follows your anchor. But if your anchor is fixed in something unwavering, something external and constant, then your consistency has a much firmer foundation. It becomes unshakable.
That makes sense. It takes the pressure off just you having to be strong enough all the time.
Right. It provides a reliable external resource.
Okay, so we have this foundation. Quiet dignity, providing the internal grounding, radical dependability, translating that into consistent, trustworthy action, which logically leads us to the peak, the third pillar. Fearless, but not reckless. The power of radical trust.
This is where it all culminates, and it's captured in this really soul-stirring line. She's fearless not because she knows the outcome, but because she trusts the one who holds it.
Wow. Okay, that immediately shifts the focus, doesn't it? It redefines fearlessness entirely.
It really does. It places confidence somewhere completely different. And again, for broad application, we can frame radical trust as this deep, unconditional alignment with your core principles or your source of strength, whatever that may be for the listener. It means your ultimate security isn't tied to volatile circumstances.
Right. But before we define what it is, the commentary is careful about what this fearlessness isn't. It's not recklessness.
Crucially important. The source makes several distinctions. First, it's not arrogance. Arrogance is trusting 100% in yourself, your own abilities, which often leads to cutting corners, impatience. Basically, recklessness.
Okay, not arrogance. What else?
Second, it's not being unbothered. It's not like she just doesn't care or is emotionally numb. The source implies she's very aware of risks. She feels the pressure. The stakes are real to her.
So it's not emotional detachment.
No, not at all. It's not cold indifference. It's more like controlled, decisive action in spite of feeling the natural human emotion of fear.
Okay, so she feels the fear, acknowledges the risk, but those feelings don't get to make the final decision. It's action based on trust, not governed by fear.
That's it, exactly. And this is where radical trust comes in. The source says her fearlessness comes from being full of faith, full of that confidence in her reliable source, which then actively leaves no room for fear to lead.
It displaces it.
Yes. Think of it like that. Fear gets demoted. It might be in the passenger seat, maybe even backseat driving sometimes, but it's not steering the car. Radical trust is in the command seat, and it pushes paralyzing fear out of the way.
I like that analogy. Fear is relegated to a minor advisor. And the source talks about fear being like a bully, right? Trying to block purpose. What kinds of fears does it mention?
It gets specific about the common culprits, the ones that really try to derail us professionally and personally. First, the fear of failing. That classic paralysis where the risk of not being perfect stops you from even trying.
Relatable.
Second, the fear of what people will say. Making choices based on chasing approval or avoiding criticism rather than sticking to your own convictions, very common. And third, the fear of not being enough. That deep-seated imposter syndrome feeling that undermines your confidence and can lead to self-sabotage almost preemptively.
Yeah, those are the big ones, the roadblocks.
They really are. But the point is, because this woman operates from radical trust, she has the inner resource to walk through those roadblocks, not be stopped by them.
And the source uses this incredibly powerful image for how she approaches uncertainty. It says, she walks into uncertainty like it's already finished.
Isn't that potent? It captures this profound psychological shift. Instead of anxious hoping, oh, I hope this works out, it's a settled knowing.
How so?
To walk into something uncertain, a new venture, a crisis, whatever, as if the conclusion is already secure, suggests this absolute cognitive conviction, a belief that the future, no matter how chaotic it looks right now, ultimately aligns with a trustworthy plan or principle.
And that frees you up mentally.
Completely. It frees up enormous mental and emotional energy. You can focus on taking the next right step, doing what needs to be done now, instead of wasting all that energy worrying about the final distant outcome, which you can't control anyway.
Okay, this circles back to that crucial point about where confidence is placed. It's the difference between shaky self-reliance and solid faith reliance.
This is probably the single most important insight for anyone listening. Her confidence isn't primarily in what she can do, her skills, her smarts, her preparation, although she uses all those.
Right, she's not passive.
Not at all. But her ultimate confidence, her security, is placed in what God has already done, or in the unwavering nature of the principle she trusts. That's the critical distinction.
Why is that so critical?
Because it moves her security off of something inherently unstable, her own performance, achievements, circumstances, which can always change or be lost, and onto something unshakable, something historical, proven, constant. Her foundation is secure regardless of the present weather.
So even if the project fails, if the investment tanks, if things go sideways,
her core identity, her fundamental worth remains intact. That allows her to get back up, learn, and move forward without that crippling existential self-doubt that can paralyze people when their confidence is solely tied to outcomes.
Wow, that's true resilience, secured by the foundation, not the immediate circumstances.
Exactly. And the commentary concludes that this combination, the dignity, the dependability, the trust, culminates in her identity. She is full of God's presence or aligned with this deep principle, making her what the source calls a force in the spirit.
A force in the spirit. What does that mean in practical terms?
It means her influence becomes bigger than just her actions or words. It extends beyond her job title, her bank account, her social connections. Her character itself creates this spiritual or psychological weight, this positive force field that impacts her environment and the people in it, often just through her quiet, consistent, trust-filled presence.
That's the full picture of being gracefully fearless. Not loud, not aggressive, but deeply, powerfully influential through substance.
Precisely.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was quite a journey through dignity, dependability, and trust. Let's try and wrap our heads around this and summarize how these three pillars work together to create that gracefully fearless person.
Sounds good.
So we started with quiet dignity. That's the internal certainty, right? Based on honor, knowing your worth, but balanced with humility. So you don't need to broadcast it.
Yeah.
It just commands attention quietly.
Then we built on that with radical dependability. This is dignity in action. It's that consistency, showing up reliably in the rain and the fire, as the source says. It prioritizes being faithful over being flashy, and that builds deep trust in relationships, at work, everywhere.
Right. Consistency over perfection. And then finally, the peak. Trust-based action, or radical trust. This displaces fear because your confidence isn't ultimately in controlling the outcome yourself.
But in the reliability of your foundation, the one who holds the outcome, or the principle you serve, so you can act boldly even when things are uncertain. These three together, dignity, dependability, trust, create that life of substance.
And, the source material had a really beautiful message for anyone listening who might feel, well, maybe overlooked, unheard, underestimated, maybe because they aren't the loudest person fighting for the spotlight.
Yes, that's such an important point. If that sounds like you, if you've ever felt that way, the commentary specifically says, quiet strength is not weakness. Calm presence is not passivity.
That's powerful. Your dignity, that deep sense of self, it's not a disadvantage in a noisy world. The source frames it as a force multiplier, spiritually and psychologically.
Absolutely. That reassurance is key. The depth of your character, your quiet, consistent strength, that's what ultimately creates lasting influence. It will outlast any temporary buzz built on just noise and performance.
Okay, so let's finish with the challenge then. How do we start putting this into practice? The source gives three really direct calls to action.
It does. The first challenge is clothe yourself in dignity, not performance. Basically, stop chasing external validation. Show up as you are with your inherent value, not as some version you think others expect. Let go of needing to constantly explain or defend your worth.
Okay, dignity, not performance. What's the second?
Choose to be dependable. Let your yes be yes, even when it's hard. That's the call to integrity. Follow through on your commitments, big or small, public or private, especially when it's inconvenient. Be that reliable person people can truly count on.
Dependability, even when hard. And the third?
Walk fearlessly. Not because the path is suddenly easy or clear, not because the dangers vanish, but because your confidence rests on that constant foundation, the one who holds a future. Move forward despite the uncertainty, fueled by trust.
Dignity, dependability, fearlessness through trust. That's a powerful charge for all of us. Before we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with that final thought you mentioned, connecting this character work to legacy.
Yes. Think about it. The dignity, the dependability, the fearlessness we've explored today, these qualities aren't just about living well now. They are the very building blocks of a legacy worth leaving. So the provocative question for you to consider is this. How are your quiet actions today, those small, unseen choices, the moments when you do right, even though no one is clapping? How are they contributing to a lasting impact? An impact that eventually commands attention, naturally, without you ever having to demand it.
Because quiet influence.
Quiet influence built on character is often the loudest and longest-lasting legacy we can leave behind.
A legacy built on unshakable character. Powerful stuff. That completes our deep dive for today. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us today on From Manuscript to Ministry. If today's featured book encouraged, challenged, or inspired you, we invite you to take the next step, purchase a copy, and support the author behind the message. When you invest in their work, You're not just buying a book, you're sowing into good ground and helping advance the kingdom of God through faith-filled storytelling. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Your support helps these powerful voices reach even further. Until next time, keep reading, keep writing, keep praying, and keep walking boldly in your calling. God is still turning manuscripts into ministries.